Hello, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to SD-WAN, Marketing Hype or Real Benefit, hosted in partnership with Evolving Networks. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Sam Cobley. I'm the Marketing Manager at Open Reality, and I'll be your webinar host today. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd just like to remind you that all attendees are currently in listen-only mode. So if you do have a question at any point, please put it in the questions box and we'll answer it at the end. We're also recording the session today, and you'll be sent a copy following the webinar. So before I introduce, I'd like to welcome your presenters today. First up is Duncan Little, Managing Director of Open Reality. Hello, Duncan.
Hello, thank you.
And secondly, a warm welcome to Nick Johnson, Managing Director of our SD-WAN partner, Evolving Networks. Hello, Nick.
Hello.
So before I hand over the reins to them, I'll just quickly go through our agenda. So we've done our introduction. So we'll just have a really quick introduction to the background behind Open Reality and Evolving Networks. We're going to talk about what exactly is SD-WAN. We'll talk about the business and operational WAN challenges faced by businesses in the UK today, the common goals for SD-WAN, the two choices that you've got, the red pill or the blue pill, and then we'll talk a little bit about the SD-WAN as a service offered by Evolving Networks. Okay, that's me done. So it's over to Duncan and Nick, who'll be able to show you how to build a frustration-free software-defined network that will save you time and money.
So thanks, Sam. This is Duncan. We're joined today by many customers of Open Reality and indeed many from our sister company BrightCloud. So thank you all for sparing the time. As you know, for many years Open Reality has worked with customers to improve the performance of applications across both local and wide area networks. We have a long pedigree of excellent experience in doing this and employing a number of different tools and technologies. And as we, BrightCloud, that is, deliver so many services from our data centers, we have for some time been looking at our own network and considering how we can help customers with their own SD-WAN. In doing that, we've evaluated a number of different technologies and in fact found that none of them were perfect or complete. And then we discovered Evolving Networks. And I'm very happy that we have developed this new partnership, and we're very excited about how this will help our customers and ourselves to address the current and future challenges that we've got. A little bit about Evolving Networks. I'm joined, as you say, by Nick Johnson, who's the Managing Director of Evolving Networks. Nick, would you like to jump in and give us a brief overview?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Duncan. Evolving Networks, we are 12 years old, formed in 2008. We have about 500 customers currently. We have had one overriding mission, if you like, in the years that we've been around, and that was to take software and apply it to connectivity to make connectivity better. And that's been our overriding ambition all the way through. In order to do that, we have focused on three complementary but distinct and parallel development streams. So we've developed our own software, we've developed our network, and we've developed our own monitoring. And we'll come on to that a bit later on. But importantly, this is a UK-based product. This is a team of software engineers and infrastructure engineers that are based in the UK, and we have been developing agile, intelligent, and resilient connectivity and delivering it as a fully managed service to customers for 12 years now. What's interesting for me is that actually we're in a situation where about 4 years ago, the world caught up and suddenly SD-WAN was a thing. Nobody was talking about SD-WAN when we started in 2008, but suddenly resilience is important. The idea that there's a different way to connect sites that isn't MPLS, that we can take the benefits of agility and resilience and apply them to connectivity, and that's great. The advantage for us is that Evolving Networks have got a 10-year head start on that. So what we have is a very tightly integrated software network and monitoring proposition that is currently rolled out across many thousands of lines, tens of thousands of users, and 500 plus customers in the UK as a stable, mature, and proven technology.
Thanks, Nick. So we're going to come back to the Evolving Network service as we go, but first I think it's worthwhile to have a couple of slides on what software-defined a software-defined wide area network is. So firstly, as far as we're aware, there is no recognized standard definition. However, Gartner have produced some insight, which we'll spend 3 slides looking at. Simply put, we want to separate the logical management and operation of the network from the physical infrastructure. And Gartner predicts, in one way or another, that 90% of organizations will be doing this over the next 3 years, either through virtualized services or through purchasing software and appliances to achieve that. So while there's no firm definition, we have been given 4 criteria, and I don't think it's a bad place to start, really. So in terms of 4 criteria, what makes an SD-WAN? Multiple connection types, the ability to aggregate traffic to improve the throughput and resilience, and to dynamically use the links. It's got to be easy, it's got to be simple to manage and configure, and it has to integrate with other technologies as required now and in the future. Gartner have also given us, and depends how you feel about this, but they gave us the hype cycle. And I think this is a useful indicator of the adoption of technology. And why I think this is interesting to talk about is that what we see here is that the technology, or at least the need for this technology, is now being adopted. Enterprises are scheduling projects, pilots, and looking at SD-WAN technology. And while I don't necessarily always believe what Gartner say, we can testify that most of our customers now are talking or even already adopting some form of SD-WAN. So with that in mind, what are the challenges today, and what do we want to be able to address in the future with a new approach to the WAN? Well, MPLS is expensive and cumbersome. Users are demanding a better and more consistent experience to a growing number of applications, and therefore application performance is essential. Obviously, with things like voice and cloud, it becomes more important. Our customers and people that we talk to every day want to move away from the complexity, and many of you are carrying some technical debt. The network needs to be more agile and change with demands from the business. And potentially, we find that we're actually wasting money on duplicating links that we're not using when we're using them in a passive and an active HA configuration. So I think we're all working too hard to manage the equipment we've got. And questions are we happy, and do we trust existing providers? But perhaps the biggest challenge is really knowing what's going on in the core, knowing what happens with the network core, and ensuring that you're getting the best performance. It's truly difficult when you're deploying technology as a solution, and I think if you're just putting technology there, Nick, do you think you got anything to comment about understanding what's happening in the core?
I think it's a challenge, and again, something that maybe we'll come on to a bit later on, but one of the major issues with the adoption of SD-WAN in the UK is that this software has been written elsewhere. This is being driven by companies in the west coast of America, a couple in the Middle East. But what we are looking at here is software that has not been written with UK infrastructure in mind. And so one of the challenges that ISPs and other service providers are absolutely wrestling with is how they take this software and they sit it on top of their infrastructure. BT made a big fanfare a couple of years ago about a global deal that they've done with Nuage Networks, and they have done nothing with it. There is not a proposition out there. You won't see many case studies out there at all, because they are wrestling with the issue of how do they fit the software onto their core network. So that is a very key factor in what is holding back the adoption of SD-WAN in the UK. The fact that integration with the core is very difficult to do.
We've got a slide on that in a minute. So I think it's worth looking at what today's business requirements are. So we're working today with a set of business requirements, And as usual, the business expects us to be able to reduce costs while getting more performance. We're becoming dependent, more and more dependent every day on the WAN, and we need to make sure that this is resilient and optimized. Optimized to give us access to our cloud applications, potentially replacing expensive solutions like ExpressRoute with an optimized SD-WAN, again saving money. And we need the flexibility and the ability to add additional technologies and to address change and challenges as they appear. So, it's pretty straightforward, the business requirements, and this is not just us making this up, this is what our customers are telling us that they're under the pressure to deliver. And that leads us to the primary goals for a deployment of SD-WAN. It's up to you how you achieve these results for your organization, but it's worth spending a couple of minutes just to produce a checklist. And as I say, this is one that we've also compiled in conjunction with some of the customers. So, cost saving is top of the list, and anybody with an MPLS network should be able to achieve that. Most organizations now are driving for an internet-first approach and want improved connectivity to improve the flexibility and the agility of business. So reduce costs as well through simplified management. I think we all feel that the potential to work too hard and to carry too much cost when we're managing the network. Application performance is important, but also visibility of that performance so that you know what's happening and you can intelligently adapt and solve problems. And finally, simplifying service delivery. Rolling out new services easily and dynamically so that you get a coexistence of multiple connections, multiple devices, and multiple cloud services that's easy to manage. And that really brings us on to the big choice that we have to make. And at this point, I have to say that we considered how to create our own SD-WAN network, how to be able to join our own customers to our cloud services, and we wanted to achieve pretty much everything I've just said in terms of goals. So I can speak from experience when I say that we originally considered taking the red pill and building it ourselves. The thing that we learned, and I think again what I'm hearing from customers, is that it isn't a simple decision to use a particular brand of technology. There's much more to it than that. And we started getting more deeply into an aspect of the business that we didn't really want to get into, in that we were talking about which service providers to work with and to trust, how to access their network to know that we had good performance in the core, and how to be able to get good information of what's happening from one end of our SD-WAN to the other, so that we can diagnose and resolve issues, and that we can actually believe our provider, because historically we've suffered occasionally from pretty poor service from ISPs. Anyway, building our own SD-WAN for ourselves and our customers turned out to be a big project, and we didn't really want to, we didn't really have the resource to do that, if I'm honest. There's a lot to choose from, and I've got this slide here. I think we felt like that at the time. Which equipment, which technology do you go with? Because the other thing that's very true is you can't trust the marketing. You need to be able to evaluate and prove this concept for yourself. Then we have a choice between ISPs. In theory, you want two. Gives us some diversity and resilience, but which ones do you want to sign and trust multiple contracts to? Multiple years of contracts to. And then, of course, certainly we want to consider different links for different requirements and different sites. And finally, we need to be able to pick the appropriate management technology. And actually, for us, this is quite easy because from Open Reality's perspective, we've been in that game for 20 years. But it's worthwhile considering the options that you've got and how to evaluate the tools that you will use to provide management and to keep your supplier honest. I think this is really what you were saying, Nick, as well. The challenge that we have from the UK infrastructure and the quality of the core network as opposed to network in other parts of the world. It's relevant when you're choosing products because most likely it was developed for a different network with different standards.
Yeah, absolutely. If you come back to the point that a lot of this software is being written on the west coast of America, the idea that you can move away from expensive lease line connectivity and that you can have multiple broadband technologies and use those. What they're typically doing is policy-based routing to make decisions about how they spread their traffic across multiple broadband tails. But if you're a business in America and you're looking at an ADSL line, you will be prepared to spend typically about $100 a month on that, and that will give you somewhere north of 50 meg download and 20 to 30 meg on the upload, and it will have entirely different characteristics. That will be a stable service. It will be low latency. It will have low jitter. It will be low uncontended for the majority of the time, certainly a low contention rate. And when that product fails, it will fail in a way that is actually, for us, more akin to what happens to a lease line over here. It will just stop working. It won't suffer the long, slow degradation in service that is something that we see a lot of in UK broadband. And I can talk for a long time about why I think that's the case, but I think there are various social and economic and geographical factors as well as the marketing here. We are crammed on a little island with infrastructure that in some cases is 100 years old. And
let's not get political.
But the fact is,
that sort of time.
It's easier to roll out. If you're a regional bell in America, it's easier to roll out a telecoms infrastructure that you can then monetize and deliver a high quality service. That's not the case over here. We've deregulated the market and people are differentiating their product on price. And the only way, being honest, to sell broadband in a way that makes any kind of economical sense at £7 a month or whatever good honest Yorkshire broadband is these days, is to deliver it in a way that has where quality goes, where quality suffers, and that's one of the main issues we've seen.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Nick. I think that gives you a good view of where we are with that. But it's interesting, isn't it, that as a developer of UK software for a UK-based SD-WAN, you've experienced that, so you've had to deal with it, and you understand how to manage and get visibility of it.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us on to the other pill, really, which is why make life harder for yourself. And I think this is really the crux to it. Don't reinvent the wheel when someone's already spent 12 years investing a lot of time and money to build an SD-WAN and can provide that as a service. It makes the decisions different and it makes the decisions easier. And I believe it reduces the cost because it becomes a purchasing decision, balancing risk against cost, resilience, performance. But we need to be careful here because there are a few services out there. And so there are questions about making sure that we have resilience at every level. And not right now, but when we get to the diagram in a second, maybe we can talk about what resilience at every level means. And the other thing is, truly tested and something that's evolved, which again is, when we're talking about evolving networks, it's been there it's been developed for the last 12 years. And then I see claims from technology vendors talking about aggregation, but we have to be careful what they actually mean by aggregation and what we mean by aggregation, for example. And this is why we as an organization selected working with evolving networks. So we've got a couple of bullet points there. I might have touched on a few of them already. Nick, would you like to take us through those?
Yeah, sure. So as we've been saying, we've been around for some time now, and starting at that point of let's take software, let's write software, and let's use it to make connectivity better. And the first things that we looked at were aggregation, were quality of service, how we can improve the user experience through applying software to connectivity. I mentioned the three strands of development earlier on, and broadly they are software, network, and monitoring. And so by having the developers in the UK and starting from that position of we are experts in UK connectivity, so let's write the software, that every internet connection we deliver for a customer, whether that's a good internet connection going to one office, or whether that is an internet connection that is forming part of an SD-WAN replacing a 50-site MPLS. Everything terminates on a device that we supply locally called an EVX device, and that presents one IP address through one port to the local LAN. And that is delivering our software. That software has, as I said, been written by our guys in Peterborough. That's what's doing the aggregation and doing the quality of service and other fancy things that we'll maybe come on to a bit later on. But in order for that software to work as well as it can, we need a high quality network underpinning it. And that's where our multi-VNO access network comes in. That's the network side of things. So even if we are delivering an internet connection at the lower end of what we might do, which is just resilient across 2 ADSL lines, we work with 5 or 6 carriers, and we go to great lengths to make sure that their networks do not overlap in any way. So when we're delivering an internet connection, it will be both resilient at the tail level, in terms of it can be delivered over multiple tails, whether they are ADSL or FTTC or leased lines or a mix of technologies, but they will also be resilient across the carrier network as well. So you might have a BT ADSL with a Talk FTTC and a Virgin leased line, for argument's sake. So we're ensuring resilience both through the core and through our data center infrastructure. And then the third element of our development is the monitoring that sits actually outside of our network. But because we have end-to-end visibility through the core networks of each of our carrier partners, and we've got NT on the customer side, whether that's a modem terminating an FTTC or an NT on a leased line, and an EVX on the customer side as well, all of those nodes on our network are feeding constant stream of telemetry back to our AI suites 24 hours a day, where that information is being crunched and then fed back via our NOC and our team of engineers there to make it automated or semi-automated decisions, enabling us to be intelligent about how we route traffic through the core. So if we start to see an issue of bearing on one of our carrier partner networks, we can crowdsource that information and then make decisions about, well, let's move traffic away from that for other customers. Even though they might not have been affected by that yet, we've got the ability to make those kind of decisions, but importantly, to deliver that under one service wrapper as evolving networks.
Brilliant. I think that's the key for me. I think one provider with a mature and well-established tool set, meaning accountability. So if you'd like to, do you want to talk us through the whole platform from beginning to end?
Sure. Slide just a bit on the right. So I mentioned earlier about the disconnect between carrier planes and software. This is an example actually of an internet connection as well, an internet connection that we might deliver to one site. So in terms of the flow of this diagram, if we work from bottom to top, the EVX is the device that I mentioned. Every customer gets an EVX. It's a managed device. It arrives pre-configured. There is a port on there that you would plug your firewall into, and that device is your internet connection. For the purposes of anything on your LAN, you see one port on one device with a static IP range. Anything that happens behind that is entirely transparent to the LAN. But what we're looking at here in terms of the transport and access plane is what is available locally that both delivers the throughput that a customer might need at the price point that they're prepared to pay, because we can get a leased line anywhere, but if you're halfway up a mountain in Scotland, it'll cost a fortune. What we would look to do is deliver a resilient mix of connectivity. So ADSL 2+, yes, FTTC, leased lines or Ethernet services, increasingly FTTP as well. We would deliver a mix of that connectivity locally, and those connectivity, those tails, would be routed through what we're calling here our multi-VNO plane, and this is our relationship with a number of different carriers. It's important when we're doing this that in order to deliver connectivity at the quality that we want, we have the buying power now to be able to go to the likes of BT and Zen and Virgin and K-Com, TalkTalk, and others, and say to them, look, we want connectivity at a certain quality, and if you can give it to us at that quality, then we've got an amount of business to put your way. And that's how we are engineering contention out of the ADSL and the FTTC and the FTTP services that we're delivering, as well as giving us the resilience. It's important to us when we bring a new carrier partner on board, we go to great pains to have full visibility of their network. We don't want, if a floor in Telehouse North goes offline, we don't want to lose 2 carrier partners from us. And so we need to know, if we're going to work with Timico, for argument's sake, we need to know that their network is not touching the Zen network in any particular exchange, or appearing in different points. And then the routing plane, the EVX on the customer site, what that is doing is taking encapsulated data, sending it off across the transport plane through the multi-VNO plane, and establishing with a number of our data centers in our core. As default, every EVX will have 2 routes to 2 diverse data centers. And broadly speaking, what that is happening, that is taking the encapsulated data from the EVX and putting it back together again and presenting it out to the internet. But the reason that we've got a number of them there is that we are all about resilience. As you can see here, resilience at every level. If one of your ADSL links goes down, it doesn't matter, there's an FTTC. If your lease line goes down, it doesn't matter, there's an FTTP. If Zen have a network problem, it doesn't matter, BT will pick up the slack. And it's the same with our data centers. We've got routes in place from every EVX to at least 2 data centers. If our Maidenhead data center goes down, everything that is routing through there will automatically fail over to our Nottingham data center or our London data center. So that's how we get resilience at every level. And importantly, on the data center side of things, we over-engineer in the data center so that in the event that we lose one of our key data centers, the traffic routed through it gets spread across other data centers, and even at that point, our capacity through those data centers won't go above 50%. So we're over-engineering at every level. But when we talk about resilience through the core, that's how we deliver resilience.
So Nick, the difference there between somebody using evolving networks or choosing to buy some SD-WAN enabled technology is really that you've over-engineered the route, the plane in the middle there, multi-VNO plane, and that you can get visibility of traffic across the core network, which is something nobody else.
We've actually had one of the networks that we use is a BT Global Services network, and it's an MOD are the biggest user of that network. We had to reach a certain scale before we had access to it. We have had the product manager of that network stood in our NOC, looking at our monitoring, saying, you know more about my network than I do. And the reason for that is the EVX on the customer site. In addition to the modems, we're one step beyond the modems. So we're gathering telemetry from everywhere. So yeah, it's the difference between what we're doing and going for SD-WAN as a service from another vendor is that you will find it very difficult to get SD-WAN as a service that has a multi-ISP element to it. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, there is a disconnect. People are really struggling with how to get the transport and access plane and the routing planes to talk to each other. Right. And the fact that we're doing it across multiple carriers is a bonus for us, but it's about the integration between the layers. That's where we win.
Right, and you've got a
just before you move on, I've had a good question come through.
Good question.
What about resilience on the EVX? Do you provide multiple per site to?
We like to put
what's the way you do it?
So there's a number of options. When it comes to resilience, it is about how much resilience you want for your business and how you want to do that. We can supply a single EVX with a certain SLA. If that box dies, which is a rare event, then you're offline until we can ship you another box. We can deliver an EVX with a hot swap, so a pre-configured device that you can put on the shelf, and then you can, in the event of a dead EVX, you can swap that out, or we can deliver them as a high availability pair. So obviously the high availability pair, you want to have high availability firewalls ready to make that work, but we can put that decision in the hands of the customer. How much resilience do you want?
Right. So it's all to do with risk and site and budget, I expect.
Indeed.
Yes. Right. Good.
Thank you for that question. If anybody else has any questions, please put them in the questions box, and I'll make sure they get filled into our panelists.
So that all wraps up with a software overlay.
So there is a software overlay working between what is effectively the EVX on the customer site and big core EVXs in the data centers. It's a software encapsulation between those 2 points that cuts across the routing plane and the transport plane.
Cracking. So now I think what we were planning to do. Oh no, sorry, we weren't. We're going to do the demo in a second. There's a features list coming.
Well, look, there's just a couple, some features here that I think it's important to know that these exist. These are features that are native to the offering that deliver on our core values of agility, intelligence, and resilience. So we're talking here about quals, we're talking about aggregation, we're talking about things that are happening behind the scenes, prioritizing TCP acknowledgements. That just makes your web browsing snappier. That improves your user experience. So if you make an investment in a better internet connection, what does that actually mean for your users in the office? Well, if their web browsing is snappier, they'll say, hey, that was good. So these are clever things that are happening behind the scenes. All of these are native to everything that we do. And what I would say is, and the advantage for us of dealing Duncan, with you guys on this is this is a toolkit. We can pick any of these things out and we can apply them in differing levels. What's important here is that we understand from a customer business perspective, what are the pain points here? What are the challenges? What are you looking for from your internet connection? What are you looking to do with your business? Where are your users? Where are your applications? And we've got services like this and others that we can then apply to make sure that the internet connection with the SD-WAN meets the needs of the business.
Well, certainly some of the feedback from customers that we've been speaking to about link aggregation is very, very important to them to be able to get true link aggregation. And the resilience, I think, and also the QoS. So it's giving a lot of value in a single service that you don't really have to then worry about.
We actually have a question about what do you mean by true aggregation? What's the alternative? Could you just expand on that slightly,
Sure.
please?
So what a lot of SD-WAN vendors are doing, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, is what is effectively policy-based routing. So the idea that I've got two internet connections coming into this building, and I'm going to put my internet data down one, but classically my voice down another. Or I might have, and actually this is a way a lot of MPLS type installations tend to evolve. My MPLS has been in for 10 years, but I went VoIP a few years ago, so I put an ADSL line at every site for my VoIP. We've gone to a cloud app for our accountancy package, and so I put an FTTC in at every site to enable that to happen. And SD-WAN, as it emanated from America, was about policy-based routing, looking at what is this data, what are the characteristics of this selection of lines I've got plugged into this SD-WAN box, and what am I going to route over which line? And we take a fundamentally different approach to that. We take multiple lines and we turn them into one large connection. And then we apply, having done that, we apply QoS rules to prioritize your data through that one large connection. And the benefit of doing that is mainly about response time. We are reacting within a third of a second to one of our lines, one of those constituent lines not being there. But the point being, you're not having to make a decision. All the data I've been putting down that connection, actually, now I've had 3 or 4 or 10 lost pings. I don't think that connection is there anymore. Now I've got to stop and gather my thoughts and route it over a different internet connection. If you are spreading those packets across the aggregated throughput of all of those links, and one of those links isn't there anymore, again, within a third of a second, we're just not putting that data down that link anymore. So that means that you can continue to have a voice call. If you've got 2 FTTC lines aggregated to a single link with QoS on top of that, you can be sending a huge amount of data over it and enjoying VoIP calls because of the QoS. If one of those FTTC lines suffers a fault, there will be a seamless, it's not even a migration, and this is what, it's not about failover. That line just isn't there anymore, so we just keep chucking data down the other line. So you can continue your voice call, there's no interruption. So there's a real benefit in terms of not having to stop and make decisions on the fly about where you're putting data. And the other benefit, of course, is that you get the benefit to the aggregated throughput of all those lines. So if you are shifting a lot of data, why not use all of the available bandwidth from all of the lines you've got installed at that site?
Ah, right, I've got that then. That's good.
Right.
So we were going to do a quick demo, break out to the eView Live, and let Nick just show us what a customer what you would see.
So briefly, this is live data anonymized from 3 customers. If you had 3 sites, this is what you would see as a customer. If you had a significantly larger number, then this would break down into more of a list view. But what we can see here are 3 sites. Each site has a single internet connection, and the single internet connection at each site is comprised of 5 links in the case of site 1, 2 links in site 2, and 4 links in the case of site 3. At headline level, we can see that all 3 of these sites are online. A little green box in the top right-hand corner of each site box. If one of the constituent links was suffering a problem, then that would turn orange. And if it was a very bad day and all of the links were down, then that would be a red box. But we can see a headline level that each of these sites is online. But if we wanted to have a look in more granular detail at what's happening, this is site 1. We can see that these guys currently, this is live throughput data, download in blue, upload in orange. Currently, this connection is downloading at 14.5 meg and uploading at 5 meg. We can see down here that the constituent links of this connection are 4 ADSL2 plus links and 1 lease line. I happen to know that's a 100 meg lease line in a live eView Live setting. That data is there. That's just, there's no sync data there because this is a demo. But the point being, what we're looking for here is this is online, it's passing data. The profile of this graph is spiky. We don't like to see plateaus. That means that we need more capacity. But this is live data, and we can have a look at what's happened over the last couple of hours by clicking on the recent tab and have a look in a bit more granular detail at what's happened. And this is mainly a diagnostic tool here. If something happened a couple of hours ago, if users were complaining that something was slow, or you know, if you've got a question about do I need to scale my connection, this is where we can see what's happened. So we're going right back here to 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we're looking at the peaks of download and upload. This connection, they're peaking at just over 45 meg. So that tells us this is scaled appropriately. You can raise a support case through here. You can look at historical data in terms of how much data was shifting in a given hour of the day. The only other site that I just wanted to show, for example, is site 2, because we might come onto this when talking about a case study a bit later on. This is 2 100 meg lease lines aggregated together. Again, looking at the live throughput in the last sort of 5-10 minutes, they're peaking at 60-70 meg plus. If we want to have a look at what they've been doing in the last 3 hours, a little bit higher, some peaks over 100 meg there. But again, this customer in particular came to us with they had a 50 meg lease line at this site that was causing them a lot of issues, and they simply need more capacity. We've gone to 2 100 meg lease lines, each on a gig bearer, and this is scaled nicely for their use. But this is just an example of the level of visibility that is available to everybody as a customer. And the only other point I would make on this is that this data is being sucked out directly from our AI suite. This is what is by default presented to a customer. If any individual customer wants a particular metric presented in a particular way, for us that's just a question of tapping into the data that we are already generating. It's probably already being presented in our NOC. So a bespoke eView Live login for a particular customer who wants to see whatever, or have a particular type of alerting for a particular site of theirs is perfectly possible, but that's what as default is available to all customers.
Cool. So let's go back to the so bottom line benefits, I think. Reduce the cost to design, implement, and manage. That's a massive one, I believe. The you know, to be able to produce ourselves or you to produce yourselves what evolving networks can give us, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. We get much improved flexibility, much improved resilience, and as we've already said, true resilience through the core. And this will improve the performance of business critical traffic and reduce the cost of issues, downtime, etc. So fundamentally, it's well engineered, it's excellent performance, and it's zero risk. Nick, you mentioned case studies. We were going to talk maybe about a couple of examples to finish.
Sure. The site 2 that I just mentioned there, I just showed you, that was the Colchester site of a company called Sports Supplements. Sports Supplements, company that's been around for about 5 or 6 years, I think. They're doing very well. They provide protein shakes and sports energy drinks and the like. They came to us just over a year ago. They have their headquarters, historical headquarters in Colchester, where they had a 50 meg leased line that they, I think, was a Virgin Tail procured through Daisy. They had an office in London, which was actually in a WeWork centre there, and the guys in the WeWork centre, and that's where the majority of their staff were. They were sharing a 1 gig service provided by WeWork. They had issues with the performance of the VPN link between those two sites. They were shifting a lot of data. They were shifting video content as well, and that had an impact on their VoIP performance. But they were also looking to launch a new manufacturing premises in Poland. And so these were all things that were in the mix. What we did, we put an EVX into the London site, we put an EVX into the Colchester site. They actually had a layer 2 link between the two, so we changed the routing on that. We immediately moved the routing so that nothing other than what was necessary was going through the link between the sites. So we got rid of the layer 2 link. Local internet breakout both in London and in Colchester. VoIP going through the point-to-point link or through the SD-WAN link between the two, with QoS rules to make sure that when they were sharing large video files, they weren't interfering with the voice over IP. We knew that the internet connection in Colchester was only 50 meg. We knew that that wasn't enough, but what we didn't know was how much they needed. So as a short-term solution, as well as plugging their existing 50 meg lease line into the EVX, we actually delivered 5 FTTC circuits as well. That gave them in excess of 300 meg of capacity, and what we saw was exactly what we've just seen on EV Live there. They were actually peaking somewhere just north of 100 meg. So what we did there was take that information and then upgrade that connection to 2 100 meg lease lines seamlessly, because that happens below the other side of the EVX. So it was a question of wait for the lease lines to get delivered, plug them in, unplug the FTTC, no downtime, no change of IP address at that point. And then the final point to make about the Poland site, the fairly classic story. They were all ready to go live, but the lease line hadn't yet been delivered to Poland. And this was a manufacturing site. They're wanting to do real-time label printing to slap on what's coming out or off the plant, so it gets shipped straight away. The printing system is in Colchester. They need a high-quality link, but the lease line has not yet been delivered. So we shipped an EVX to site and actually temporarily procured 2 wireless links, about 30 meg each, and then we brought them into the SD-WAN via the wireless links, and that worked pretty well. Unless it was a windy day and the trees were blowing and got in the way of the wireless thing, that worked pretty well. But it got them through until such time as the lease line went live in Poland, at which point they unplugged the wireless links and plugged the lease line in. So we've migrated them fairly easily to a point where we're managing the data across their network very much better. We've upped the capacity at Colchester. Actually, they have moved from, I think, the Bishopsgate WeWork office to the Poultry WeWork office, and they just picked the EVX up, walked it around the corner, plugged it into the new site. Our guys made a change and they were up and running immediately. So they've now got a very flexible network that is scaled correctly to meet their needs.
I'm impressed with the fact that you popped in 5 FTTC lines, then just migrated that to a lease line. So can you add lines as and when people need them?
Absolutely.
For the aggregated, but can you take them away as well if they don't need them anymore?
Yeah.
So that is properly flexible on a monthly basis.
That leads into a good question, actually. Someone said, can you install the evolving network solution over their existing lines, or do they have to buy connectivity from themselves?
We can do. There's a lot of benefits to that tight integration that I was mentioning, where if we are supplying the connectivity, we have a lot more visibility. That helps us in terms of proactively maintaining quality, but also reacting to issues as well. Where that really comes into its own is for issues of migration. If you are looking to migrate from an MPLS, again, if you've got multiple sites, you will find that there is not one single end date for your contract. You will find that contracts are ending at different times at different sites. What you don't want to have to do is effect an immediate change to a new solution, and then you might be paying for a leased line at one of your sites for a year or two that you're just not using anymore. What we can do is install an EBX at every site, effectively throw our network software over your existing infrastructure, and then migrate the underlying connectivity over to us in time. But that at that point is a very seamless and easy transition to make. But yeah, it can be done. The benefit of it is for migration, really.
Great, thanks.
Very good. Well, I think that sort of brings us towards the brings us actually to the end. Do we have any more questions coming in, Sam, at all?
I think we've covered the other one. The other one was just talking about resilience at every level. I think Nick did a great job of explaining that with the network diagram. So I'll give a minute or two for anybody to ask a final question. Following this session, your Open Reality account manager or Bright Cloud representative is going to give you a follow-up just to find out if there's any more information we can provide to you. Obviously, if you'd like to book a follow-up session to find out a bit more about the evolving network solution and discuss your individual requirements, then please let us know. You can either email me at the address listed, or obviously speak to your account manager at Open Reality or Bright Cloud when they get in touch with you. We've just had one question come through. Are there options for local internet breakout? Does all internet traffic break out within the central data centers?
No, there is. It does break out through the data centers, but it's in terms of your topology, it is about a software decision. So local internet breakout is absolutely something that we can deliver as part of an SD-WAN. If you want to go down your classic MPLS route and have everything centralized on the data center where you might have a central firewall, we can do that. If you want to go down a local internet breakout route where everything goes out locally, we can do that. Or if you want your hybrid scenario where some traffic is routed centrally for firewalling or any other purposes, but other traffic has local breakout, we can do that as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting use case, actually. I know I was talking to somebody recently who were in, well, not actually in the hospitality industry, but very similar. And they wanted an SD-WAN for their production core business network, but local breakout for all their guests and hotel users or similar.
And that's perfectly possible. And what we would do in that scenario is potentially deliver two IP ranges as well. So you can have your IP range for your corporate WAN, but then if you've got your guest Wi-Fi, whatever you want local breakout, you can give them an entirely separate IP range.
Okay. Thank you everyone for attending and for your great questions. Obviously, thank you very much to Duncan and Nick for a great presentation. We all hope to speak to you very soon. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.